And I guess I should introduce myself to those of you who I haven't met before. My name is Dixon. I'm the Executive Director of the Saskatoon SPCA. Been in this role since March. I'll be presenting a bit on 2019 and 20 a bit later on. If at any time in the future any member or anyone in the public who's taking part today has a question for me or wants to reach out for any reason at all, please do reach out and the staff at the front here will direct calls to me, and I'll be more than happy to connect with you. Albert, if you want to take over and get things rolling, I'll hand it over to you.
You bet, guys. Again, like Graham was saying, I'm Albert. I'm just filling in for Jane, Vice Chair of the board. Let's get things started. Bear with me. No one will die or get hurt if we fumble or we miss some things as we go along. So that's a good thing about doing virtual, although that doesn't happen in person either, any of the meetings I've been to anyway. So I guess we'll call to order at this time. We got 6:07, call to order this meeting. And I guess first things first, we're going to approve the annual general meeting minutes or the meeting agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and look for a mover. Erica, perfect. I'll call for a second. And Ron, thank you guys.
Hi, my name's Jane. I am the chair of the board of the Saskatoon SPCA, and on behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome everybody here to our AGM. I know that there are some new members joining us, and I would like to say welcome. This is an organization you will be proud to be a part of. For the old members, it's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and thanks for participating in our organization and taking an active role and being a member that cares. We really appreciate it. One of the things that I'd like to address from the board perspective is the obvious of a new executive director. So this change in leadership came from multiple discussions we had at the board level where we decided that it was time to breathe new life into the organization and bring somebody in who can revitalize some of the processes and just shake things up a bit. We went through an extensive search and had multiple applicants from all sorts of sectors and industries from all across the province. Through some work by board members on a committee, we were able to narrow things down to a few candidates for interviews, and from there we made our choice of Graham. We were very pleased to bring him on and very excited for all the work and all the ideas that he had right from the get-go. And it was unfortunate that Graham started in March, right before COVID happened. So Graham has been thrown some incredible curveballs and has responded in incredible ways, and we're very happy with the work he's done, and we're very happy he was there. I also, along the same vein, want to extend my heartfelt appreciation to the staff and management who managed in between without an executive director and did a superb job and made sure that all the animals that came through our shelter were well cared for, were loved, and found the homes they were after. I'd also like to thank our staff for their ability to be nimble and agile and adjust through all of this crazy pandemic stuff and keep doing what we're doing and be there for the animals of Saskatoon. They've done amazing work, and as a board, we are very proud of everybody at the SPCA. I know Graham has lots of numbers and stats and stuff to talk to you about, so I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I will be joining the meeting as soon as possible. I just started a PhD, so I have, unfortunately, a class that goes until 6:30, but I will be there to answer questions. In the meantime, there are board members present at this meeting today who will be happy to answer your questions until I can be there. Thanks again for joining us. This is going to be an incredible year moving forward. All of the things, all of the plans we've had will be back on track once the world kind of finds a new normal. And we're looking forward to helping the organization grow as we move through to this new future. Thanks very much. See you guys soon.
Well, it's hard to follow that up. I wish I got to tape mine so that I didn't have to go live like this, but I think we're just going to do good. So thanks to Jane. She'll jump on and she'll, hopefully you guys have some good questions for her and stuff like that. It's now up for Graham. She said you were going to amaze us, so take it away, Graham.
I'll do my best. So, as Jane said, I started in March 9th, and I think within a couple of weeks, COVID was already here in Saskatchewan, and we were having to lay people off. So, I do want to talk about that, and I suspect that that's probably people are more interested in that than anything else about how we've sort of dealt with that. So, I'll talk briefly about 2019. I'll talk about what's happened so far this year, and then I'll talk a little bit about the future, my vision for the future, and the things that we're going to be working on going forward. So this graphic kind of outlines some of the important stats from last year. 4,000 animals through our door. It's been pretty consistent at about that number for the last several years. Almost 300 animals rescued from neglect or abuse. 600 animals returned to families' homes. Over 2,000 homeless pets adopted. These numbers are really fantastic, and it's hard to capture the amount of work that's gone into all of this, and the blood, sweat, and tears of the staff to make all of this happen. Jane talked about all the hard work that our staff do, and I have to reiterate that point. I wasn't here in 2019, so I can't comment too much on it, but I know it was not an easy year. They were definitely forced to be nimble and agile and roll with the punches. And having spent 6 months working alongside them, I have to say I'm impressed by them every day. So if you get a chance to chat with any of our staff, give them a pat on the back from a social distance, I guess. Let them know you appreciate their work, because they really do work incredibly hard. And this infographic doesn't really represent all the work that was done last year. So moving forward, I mean, I want to talk a bit about 2020. And if you want to move up the next graphic there, Jasmine, I went through and I looked at what an average year looks like for the number of animals coming in and going out of the shelter. So that's what this graph is. The blue line is animals coming in, the yellow line is animals going out. And most years look like this. And you want to see those lines kind of partner with each other. So the same number of animals coming in or going out. Our busy season seems to be between May and October, November, when kitten season really hits us. But the next slide will show you how different this year has been so far. So that the dotted line is this year's animal intake. So this has been completely abnormal in every way possible. So maybe I'll just use this graphic as a way to tell the story of 2020 so far. Early in the year, before I got here for January and February, we were already seeing a higher than normal number of animals showing up at the shelter, higher number of adoptions as a result. And then when COVID hit in March, there was this great deal of uncertainty as to whether we could even stay open or not. There's just so much uncertainty, and I know we were all affected that in different ways. So we decided to adopt out as many animals as possible into homes and remove all barriers that would have prevented animals from getting into homes, and mainly that was financial. We waived all of the adoption fees, and people responded. I couldn't believe how many people came and adopted animals, and I can't believe how hard our staff worked to adopt these animals out. I think we'd had 150 adoptions in the month of March, which is just incredible. And you can see that spike here on this graphic. So our numbers went down almost to zero. We had a very few animals in-house after March, and we started laying staff off late March, early April, and things really slowed down. We were designated an essential service by the province, so we weren't forced to shut down at any time. And by July, you can see our numbers slowly started to grow. But you'll notice in March, we have a huge number of outcomes, that's the adoptions, and a smaller number of incoming animals. Animal control stopped bringing animals to us. They essentially mothballed their operations and only brought in animals on an emergency basis. So that was to kind of safeguard the health of their employees and ours as well. But we had the opposite problem in July, where we had a huge number of animals incoming and fewer outgoing animals. And so that resulted in a huge spike in numbers of animals here in the shelter. It definitely put a lot of strain on us, but the numbers have balanced out. And as you can see in August, we've sort of hit that equilibrium where the same number of animals coming in are going out, which is good to see. So our adoption numbers are slowly rising. We're back to seasonal average numbers. Our staffing levels are back up to normal. So it's been literally a roller coaster year. And in terms of finances, we definitely took a hit when we waived those adoption fees. In retrospect, I don't think I would have done that differently. Those animals got into a home, and that's all that really matters. So We've definitely benefited greatly from the federal wage subsidy. For those who might not be completely familiar with that, it's a 75% wage subsidy. So it's really allowed us to hire on staff, get people back on the job, and function as normally as possible. It's been a huge lifesaver for us. And I also want to point out some of the good work that Nella has done. So Nella's sort of put this online AGM together for us, and she's done a great job. She's been pulling in donations throughout this time, despite all the challenges that everyone in this sector is facing. And I want to highlight one of the campaigns that she put together. So Canada Helps is a national organization, and they raise money annually through a campaign called the Great Canadian Giving Challenge. Nell and her team put together a campaign, and this got national recognition. It was chosen as one of 4 campaigns that was used to show to other organizations what a good campaign looks like, what an inspiring campaign looks like. And we brought in over $10,000 through that campaign, and I'm exceptionally proud of the work that Nella and Jasmine and the rest of our team did on that. I do want to talk a bit about the future. I'm not a big fan of the catchy business talk and lingo, and that's basically what this slide is. And I want to kind of humanize this and talk about what capacity, partnerships, and sustainability means, because I think I've got quite a clear idea of the direction I think we need to go as an organization, and try to summarize that for you as best I can. I want the Saskatoon SPCA to be the gold standard shelter in Canada. I think we've got the skills in-house. We've got a community of supporters here that really back us up. I really want to get us to a place where we are operating at a higher level. And to do that, we need to find a way to serve our community. And I think there's a movement nationally right now among shelter operators to see ourselves less as adoption agencies and more as organizations that are working towards increasing the welfare of animals in general. And I really want us to sort of adjust our mindset in that same way, and focus less on adoptions and find ways that we can work upstream and stop animals from getting into the shelter to begin with. So the real question is, how do we stop these animals from ending up here? And a lot of that comes from capacity. So one thing that that I know the board really firmly believes in, and I do as well, is that we need to increase the spay and neuter rates in Saskatoon. We need to find ways to make opportunities available for the public to have affordable spays and neuters for their pets, so we don't have an overpopulation problem and these animals don't end up here. There's other things that I'm looking at to increase our capacity. One of the things that I neglected to talk about in reference to COVID was our foster program that we've put a lot of energy into, beefing up the number of placements we have in the community for animals to stay, as opposed to being in a shelter. The higher the numbers of animals in the shelter, the greater the rate of viruses and bugs that get spread and transmitted. Animals just generally are happier outside of the shelter. So I think right now, for the last 2 months, we've had an average of 60 to 80 animals at any given time out in the community, living in people's homes on a temporary basis until we find their permanent home. That's the kind of capacity that I think we can build. It's a benefit for the animals, and it's also a benefit for the organization. Partnerships is something I really want to grow, and I think specifically I want to put an emphasis on building partnerships with those of you taking part in this meeting today as individuals, adopters, or supporters of any kind. There's so many vet clinics in Saskatoon, and I didn't appreciate this until coming into this role, but we've got, on a per capita basis, more vet clinics than probably anywhere else in Canada. And that has a large amount to do with the fact that we've got the vet college on campus and the vet tech program at Sask Polytech. And I think if we can build relationships with the business community and the veterinarian community in general, we'll be more likely to achieve the things that we have planned for ourselves. I think there's also an opportunity to build really strong relationships with the city of Saskatoon and the government of Saskatchewan, as well as at the University of Saskatchewan and Sask Polytech. And those are going to be high on my priority list, is to get out and build relationships with those people and those organizations. And lastly, sustainability. And it's a catchphrase, and I'm not using that term in an ecological way, but I really think it's important that we find ways to grow along with Saskatoon. Saskatoon is a growing city. And as we look to the future, we have to find ways to match that growth. We have to build a business model that can scale along with the growth of the city. as we have more people living here, we'll see more pets in the city, and we'll have to find ways to match the service that's needed by that increase in population. And I think there's a lot of really interesting and innovative approaches to generating revenues and to bring in dollars to support the nonprofit sector right now. And I've spent a lot of time researching that, and I'm very excited about the social enterprise movement, and I might be getting into territory that is one of those things that I get really excited about, but maybe those of you listening today aren't. But I think that there's a lot of ways we can more sustainably generate revenues to support the work we do that doesn't rely necessarily so much on charitable giving, and using the marketplace to generate funds that support our work and our mission and our mandate. I hope that wasn't too business lingo-y. I'm really, really excited to be here right now. I think this is a really exciting time to be part of this organization. I stepped in at a really strange time, no question, but I've discovered that I'm an optimist, and I think anything that happens after this is going to be so easy to manage, because COVID sort of set the standard. I've gotten the worst out of my way early on. Everything after this, I think, is going to be a breeze. So reach out to me at any time, and I'd be more than happy to chat with you. And that wraps up my presentation. In terms of the financials for 2019, we do have Jesse with PricewaterhouseCoopers presenting next. And I'm sure that the financials will offer a lot more information about 2019 than I was able to provide.
Thanks, Graham. And I'll just take really a few minutes here to point out, what I think are probably the most important items from the financial statements. So again, these are as of December 2019, and they contain our independent auditor's report at the front. So again, our role at PwC is as auditor of SPCA to ensure that the financial report each year is accurate and contains all of the information needed from a Canadian financial reporting standard for nonprofits. So that's our role, and we have signed off and provided that opinion again this year. In terms of what I believe to be the key figures, and hopefully if you can see my cursor on screen, I'll try and just point to these. On the balance sheet that I have on the screen right now, I just wanted to speak briefly to the fund balances. Now, when you look at the financials of the SPCA, they're split between sort of the normal operating aspects of the organization and the restricted funds, which is really the Ray Doer and the lottery funds. My comments tonight will be more on an overall basis, just to get to the totals for the entire organization. So if you look at the fund balances where my cursor is now and near the bottom right, you'll see in total there's approximately $1.3 million of net assets that the SPCA has as of December 2019. Approximately 1 million of that is actual cash and investments, and around 300,000 of that is really the value that's on the books for some of the capital assets. So the facility improvements that have been made the last couple of years, for example. So really the main number I wanted to point out here was that $1 million figure, which really represents cash in the bank and investments that the SPCA has at December 2019. If we talk about the results for the year 2019, again, a lot of figures on this page, and I just want to speak to the overall at the very bottom. So you can see at the bottom where it says sort of excess of revenue over expenditures. So this is the surplus for the 2019 year. So you can see in the leftmost column, the operating and capital funds. It was essentially break even from an accounting perspective. There was a surplus there of $19,000. And then in the restricted funds, which is, again is the Ray Doer and all the investments that it holds, as well as the lottery activities, you can see there was a surplus of $119,000. And about $70,000 of that was from the investment portfolio, and the other 50 was profit on the lotteries that the SPCA held during the year. So when you take those together, again, on an accounting basis, that leads you to a surplus for the 12 months ended December 2019 of $138,000. On a cash basis, it was essentially break even. I always like to talk both about sort of the accounting surplus for the year and then the actual cash surplus if we just look at the movement in the cash and investments. So essentially break even from a cash flow perspective. And again, I think overall, just based on having done the audit for a number of years now and having discussions with the board and finance committee, I think that's a positive result for 2019 and a good outcome for the organization. And again, all leading to sort of about $1 million of financial assets available at the end of 2019 to take the organization forward. So otherwise, again, everyone has a copy of the financial statement document. There are a number of pages to it and a lot of numbers, a lot of notes to the financials, all of which I think are important and convey some good details if you're interested in digging further. But of course, with the time that we have tonight, I don't want to take up the whole agenda kind of going through all of these numbers. So I'd say have a look through the financials and the notes at your own leisure. And then, Graham mentioned at the top, if people have questions afterwards, always feel free to contact, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the audit or the financials through any questions that come to Graham or the finance committee as well.
Thanks, Jesse. Looks like Jane has joined us now, so welcome, Jane.
Hello, everybody.
Were there any questions related to the audited financials?
So if there's no questions, we will move to approve the 2018 financial statements. So if I can have a mover, Erica, and if I can have a second on that one. There's two good things about doing these things virtually. Is one thing, we can wear our pajamas, and the other thing, it moves a lot quicker than if we were all in person. I like the pajama part the most, but I don't get to interact with that many people, obviously. Okay, so we have a seconder, Ali, thank you. I'm going to move to appoint PricewaterhouseCoopers as the Saskatoon SPCA auditor for 2020 financials. I will look for a mover on that.
I'll move, Albert. It's Paul.
Thank you, Paul. I will take a seconder. So we're at 100% there. So motion passes. We will go into the election of board of directors. So we only have one board candidate, and that would be Sadie. I will call for any nominations from the floor. Well, that's such a nice picture, Sadie. I wish people had nice pictures of me like that. It'd be the worst picture of me up there. I'll call for any other nominations to the floor. Again, if there's any other nominations for board candidates. And I believe it tells me I have to call this for 3 times. So yeah, and I just got note motion for PWC has passed. So that is done. So I'll call one last time for nominations from the floor for the board, and then we'll move to, and I don't see that, so we'll move to motion to close nominations, sorry. Okay, can I have a mover on that? Ali, thank you, and a seconder. And Ron, thank you so much. And Jane, thank you. And can I have a seconder? Leslie, there we go. So welcome, I guess I could say welcome to the board, Sadie. I know that you've been doing some work for us as well. So welcome officially to the board.
Sure. Albert, there's a
Yes.
question. Are there any other candidates besides Sadie?
No, there were no other candidates that had came forward. We did reach out to some people and opened it up, but no, there was no other candidates. Hopefully that answers that question on that one. And the motion has passed. So
There is a question. This one
Sure.
might be for Graham, though. It says it's off topic, but I am assuming there will be no open house in December.
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Well, if I've learned anything in this role, it's not to predict anything too far in the future. Right now, we're not open to the public. We're only open by appointment only. I think if things are the way they are now in December, I would say the open house probably would not go forward unless we could find some kind of an innovative way to have a virtual open house or something where we could still have the public come through the building or engage with them in some way. Having not taken part in that in the past, I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, but I think if we can find a way to do a version of that, I would be all for it.
The auxiliary is still holding a Christmas raffle, but the rest of the events will sadly be missed. Another follow-up question. Someone is looking for the list of who the board members are currently.
I can answer that one. It should be available on the website. I believe that there is a list of who the current board members are, including bios, correct, Noah?
That's true.
Yeah.
It's under the About Us section.
Yes, it's on the website, listed in the About Us section. And when you click through on every name, you actually get a bit of a bio of every board member as well. The next question is, are there any retiring board members?
One board member, Crystal, had her term was up and she decided to not renew. So we, as the board, have already said thank you to her. She was a great contribution to lots of our discussions around the board table, including discussions about the spay and neuter clinic. She was a big part of kind of formulating those plans, and so we're very grateful for her contributions for sure. Everybody else who was up for renewal chose to renew, myself included, because we're all fairly, well, I wouldn't say fairly, we're all very dedicated to the organization and helping see it through these times, and are still able in our own lives to afford the time to make sure we're here for the organization.
Thank you. So heading back to that other question, it says, what percentage of bequests are put into the Ray Doer Fund these days?
And I think that question would probably go to Allie.
So 50%, it's in our bylaws, 50% of our bequests go into the Ray Doer Fund. There is an outstanding balance on the balance sheet, essentially saying we owe ourselves some cash. So we do have an outstanding balance right now, which is for the last year, possibly two, which will be paid once we decide to free up the cash, essentially. But yeah, always 50%, that's a bylaw, so that will never change unless it goes to the membership at an AGM.
Thank you.
Again, of course, like Graham said, I'll echo him earlier. He said, reach out to him if you have any questions. So after the call today and after the meeting today, if you have any board questions, feel free to reach out to us, and by all means, reach out to Graham for any other questions.
Hi, I just had a question. I asked the question about the Ray Doer Fund. So how much, like was that money used operationally instead, or like do you say there's money owing the Ray Doer Fund?
It's essentially just sitting in our other investment account at the moment. So it just needs to be cashed in from one account to the other.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't like it was used for operational expenses or something?
No, it's just sitting
in
the other investment account. Yeah, it's just kind of a transfer. I think part of the reason right now is that we're earning good interest on some of that right now, so we don't want to take it out before its maturity and move it in there. If we had a few I'll say better years financially the last 2 years, because when we operate at a deficit, it's essentially down to cash where we're not receiving that cash. We don't have a surplus. So if we had a few better financial years, we would have had extra cash to put in for the Ray Doer. But because the last year, I think it was about 240,000 was our deficit, we didn't have any extra cash. So we have to cash from one and put it into the other. So now the amount owing essentially to Ray Doer is less because we had a positive net income this year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
With that, I will call a motion to adjourn. Mallory, perfect. Well, and that concludes our call and our AGM for this year. And it is, I don't even know what time it is. It is 6:46.
Perfect. Before people leave, I do want to just mention a couple things now that the meeting is adjourned that maybe didn't necessarily need to be included in the meeting minutes. And I want to challenge everyone who's taken part today to support us. Monthly donors are huge support to us. People can choose to give as little or as much as they want, but it kind of builds in some stability for us so we know how much money is coming in every month. And ultimately, we can't do the work that we need to do without support from people like you. So that's my small pitch. If you feel in a need to support us, we'd be very, very grateful. And thanks for taking part today. I know this is not the best way to hold an AGM, but I have to say I'm very happy with the way it went, and I'm glad to see so many people turn out. So thank you very much.